Hi everyone, welcome to Insentra Insights. This is where I get the opportunity to help share with you what some of the experts in our business develop and create and they bring to our partner channel. Today, I'm joined by Lee Foster, who's the global head of our solutions business. Lee, thanks for joining me on the couch.
Thanks, Ronnie. Great to see you.
So Mr. Foster, you've been with us now for 9.5 years, crew member number 3.
Correct.
And what a journey you've had since you've been with us.
It's been a phenomenal journey.
Phenomenal, right? From starting as a Veritas expert to becoming a security expert, a Red Hat expert, a Microsoft expert. You've just had your fingers across so much in our organisation, and that's why we've now got you as the global head of our solutions. So firstly, congratulations on that role. Very, very well deserved.
Thank you, Ronnie.
So one of the things that you've come up with is you identified over the years that you've been with us and the previous years when you've been working at vendors a couple of core issues that customers were having, and you developed the concept of architect as a service.
Correct.
Tell me, what's led you to create this? What was the problems that you were trying to solve?
Great question, Ronnie. It comes from where you said, from a journey from back in the UK when I was consulting for Veritas at the time. Spent a lot of time in the square mile, working on core banking platforms, trading systems, payment gateways and so on. But almost every time I was working in one of those hedge funds or banks, I would always come up against the frustration of there's more to do. I'm only solving part of the problem. Right? And if I took that back to people within the Veritas business and said, look, we can do more here. Veritas hat, no, we can't talk about this, we can't talk about that, we can't really add any more value. Didn't really have the channel opportunity that we have here with Insentra. So I had no way to take it back into the business and turn it into something else. So that's carried on through my career, even when I've been in Insentra consulting, the same way, find ourselves in industries delivering outcomes for partners that aren't tightly connected with the client. Right? So therefore there's dollars left on the table, there's outcomes that can't get completed, we're just doing bits and pieces of it. So it really got me to thinking, how can we craft something that allows a partner to take a message to a client that is, we can understand the bigger piece of what you're trying to do. So we may be engaged in a client on a discrete piece of work, and there's the opportunity for us to help solve more of their problems. Right? So the landscape is, fix this problem for me, this is my immediate perceived pain. My view is that if we can have a broader conversation, I guess higher up the value chain, as to what truly is the outcome that you're trying to achieve or the vision that you're trying to get to, not the technical problem that you're actually just trying to solve.
So why are we doing this project is the question.
Exactly.
Right.
It always, for me, and it's been core to me for a long while, it always comes back to the why. We can always do the what, that's easy. What is this, can we fix it? Yes. But the why is always the harder question to ask. Why is this project not being completed? Why are you not able to execute on your vision? How can I help you become more successful? Right. So the intent of the service is to work with those individuals to deliver successful outcomes and help them move forward with their vision.
But more at a high level than a bespoke, so they might come and say, I need to do a Win 10 rollout.
Yep.
And it's great, we can go in and we can scope up the Win 10 project and we can do autopilot and Intune and all of that lovely stuff.
Yep.
But I think what you're trying to say is, well, why are we doing Win 10? And what's the objective of it? It can't just be, we've got to get rid of Windows 7, because it's an opportunity once you're doing a Win 10 transformation. Or if it's we want to move to Azure, we want to move to some cloud service, or we want to put in a desktop virtualization solution.
Exactly.
The desktop virtualization solution is one thing, but it's got so much else wrapped around it technologically.
Yep.
But really what you're interested in is what's the business outcome we're trying to solve for.
Absolutely.
The vision, you say.
The vision, exactly. What I experienced a number of times, as you've heard me say, is that move to just say we need to do this thing is driven by a much broader business requirement that's just not being met. So someone in IT, for example, may say, we have to do this, in your example, we have to go to Win 10 because Win 7's end of life. So that gets pushed up in the business, say we have to go do this. But really a lot of businesses don't, or are not empowered to actually go and push that down. So we're going to move to Windows 10 because we want to take advantage of the new Windows Virtual Desktop, for example. Right? We want to take advantage of DR in the cloud. We want to move away from commodity hardware. There could be corporate directives around, industrial waste, for example, that an IT person won't know about. So it's understanding what those bigger objectives and directions are, and turning those into an actionable technical delivery roadmap for a client.
So how do we sort of start this? What is it that when we're having a conversation with a partner,
Yep.
or we're having a conversation with a partner and their client,
Yep.
and we're going in and we're talking, we have the opportunity to talk to an infrastructure manager or a CIO, because it really is pitched at that level.
Yep.
What are some of the questions you're asking them in that initial discussion?
Great question. One of the biggest ones by far is what, in the monthly or quarterly business and executive meetings that you have, what are the top 3 agenda items? If you wouldn't mind sharing them, what are the top 3 and why are they never resolved? Right. So for example, you've been tasked with, you're a CXO or a CIO, you've been tasked with driving down cost of consumption in cloud. Why is it month after month after month you just can't show those savings? Right. It's highly likely that you just don't know where to look. Right. There could be other things like compliance. We have to be compliant by this date.
Like with
GDPR if it's a European unity, right, or in the European Union, or if it's something as simple as PCI DSS for people to store and collect credit card information,
mm-hmm.
or a number of different, they may just want to be compliant with ASD8,
mm-hmm.
right? So there could be a burning need to be compliant, or they could have a pending audit. So how do I get prepared for this audit? How do I not waste time, and how do I not ultimately face the risk of penalties and fines? Right, those are the kinds of things that just keep going around. If I'm a CXO, as you are, and you sit in your board meetings, what are the things that we can't solve in our business? Why can't we solve them? So that's the intent, is to get into that cycle and build trust so that we become the guy that the CXO calls from the golf course to say, hey, Ronnie's telling me this. Are we looking at this? Oh, is it on our roadmap?
Right.
We want to become that.
So it's really engaging at the business level to understand what the core business objectives are.
Yep.
And then to see what falls out of that technologically to support the business outcome.
Yes.
As opposed to, let's go do a tech project without necessarily understanding the bigger why.
Yep.
And maybe not solving everything around it.
Correct.
So give me an example, because I know you developed this, what we call architect as a service.
Yep.
Which is an interesting name, because it's not just an architect that we're delivering as a service, right?
That's a good point.
You know what? Let's start there. Let's talk. What's the difference between what we would do in an architect as a service engagement and say what one of the big 4 would do, or a big consultancy would do? Because it sounds to me like there's a little bit of business strategy. Let's understand your business strategy and let's unpack that into technology. But it's not that, right?
No. Good call. So the concept of this service is short and sharp, right? So it's get in, understand some pain, and immediately show some value.
So time to value is
critical to this, right? So often you find with the big 4 that they will do a 6-month piece of work, really high strategic level work, and deliver, I call it sometimes a trophy, otherwise it's called it's a tombstone of something that never gets looked at.
Chunk.
Exactly. Sits and gathers dust, or nobody wants to look at it, right? And it's a lot of money and a lot of time. This is aimed at truly understanding, as I said, short and sharp. I use Ronnie as an example. What are the top 3 things that are a pain for you? Let's remove that pain and show some value.
So like needle shifting things that a CIO can go into a board or an infrastructure manager can take up to leadership and say, these are the core things, we know these are the big problems, and here's my strategy to address them.
Exactly.
When you say short sharp, define short sharp.
2 to 4 days at most.
2 to 4 days.
2 to 4 days, right? So we're talking, in real terms, getting a day with a CXO is an almost impossible ask, right?
Yeah.
So in real terms, we've done a lot of work developing the questionnaires that lead up to an architect as a service engagement.
Right, so when we identify that that an organisation needs to get some core initiatives taken care of, we'll send them a questionnaire before we even turn up.
Correct.
That's awesome, right? And we do that across our business, and I actually think that's one of the things that differentiates our approach.
Yep.
Because a lot of times when you're going and doing pre-sales, as it's called, or architecture type work, or solution architects go in, half the meeting spent fact-finding.
Yeah, which is, to my point, right? I'm going to use you again as an example. If I'm going to get a day with you, a half day with you, or 2 hours with you, I don't want to sit and waste your time asking you questions that I could have gotten from other people in your business a week, a month before. So I want to be able to make sure that I've gotten everything that's in your head out of your head, gotten you thinking the right way as to how we're going to interact in that session.
Right. So what are some of the questions that go into this type of questionnaire then?
Things like I said earlier, what are the top 3 things on the executive agenda that don't get addressed?
Yep.
One that people see as a bit of a cliche, but what keeps you up at night?
Yep.
Something always keeps somebody up at night. What's the thing that, if you're the guy, and I'll get to an example a bit later, but if you're the guy that's responsible for the spend, say in Azure or a given cloud platform, and you know you're not making those savings, every night you're going to bed and you're sweating over, why can't I find these savings?
Yep.
I need to show this before my next board meeting, and as the time comes closer, your anxiety goes up, you can't find it, you start clutching at straws, and that's when shooting from the hip happens. I'll just go and do this piece of work to drive some cost out, and it won't be the right thing for the business.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So the difference between the big end of town consulting and even the middle end of town consulting is that this isn't designed to be able to say, here's how you're going to fix every problem.
No.
This is designed to say, let's understand the problem before we even come in.
Correct.
Understand what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And then let's unpack ways in which we might be able to address that problem.
Yes.
And look at that. So give me an example. Let's take, for example, because I know we've done this with a client recently who had data concerns over their data security.
Yep.
Let's just talk, our audience through what happened in that. How did it come about that we got the engagement? What came from it? What are the next steps?
Yep. Great example. So in this particular client, they're a big marketing organization, and their data is their competitive edge, right? So they very quickly identified the more data that they create and the more campaigns they create for their clients and their tier one clients in the US, that is their competitive edge. So as soon as that data is at risk and somebody else could take that campaign data, it could just destroy their business overnight. So they identified quite quickly that information protection was what they needed. They needed to protect themselves from data loss, IP theft, typical data loss prevention type controls. So they reached out via their partner and said, look, we've identified this as a pain. And we said, why? So with the why is it a pain? Why are you concerned? And we unpacked that a bit more. And they're like, we've got people that kind of come into our business on contracts. They log in from locations that we don't know or trust. We trust them when they're working on a campaign for us, and we give them stuff, but we don't know where they are and what they're doing. So they quite quickly were able to, through those why questions, is okay, so it is an IP theft problem that you have, but what you're really telling me is you don't trust your people, right? And then you go a bit further, and actually I don't really trust the devices, I don't know them. They're BYO devices, I have no control over those. So quite quickly we're able to take it from the what, through the whys, up to the higher level as to, right, first off, let's agree that identity for you is actually the problem, right? Do I know and can I trust who these people are and where they're coming from? And if I can get that right, I can get the people right, I can understand process. Once I know that, I know what devices they're on, I can ultimately get to fix my problem. But throwing in a product to try and fix...
Like a data loss prevention solution.
Exactly.
I've got to control my data, quick, put in a DLP.
Yeah,
it's like, but you've still got this fundamental issue over here.
Absolutely. Right, you've got a product there really doing nothing that costs a lot of money. It doesn't even know what to do, right? Because it doesn't know who the people are and what devices they are and what's good and what's bad. So you've got to teach it that, right? So for that organisation, we're able to deliver a roadmap that talked to a couple of core things. The first one was, what do we need to do first, and how quickly can we do it? Which is great, that's brilliant, that starts the problem solving, but how quickly can we do it? But the bit that I like to slice through that is the time to value bit that we talked on earlier. In this particular organisation, 1,200 or so seats, licensed quite heavily for the Microsoft stack, and really not consuming that part of the product set. So it's all there. It's like having all of the toys but not being able to play with them. So we're able to say, given what you already own and what you already pay for, we can show you quickly value. So if I give an example of what that means, the first thing we said we would fix was identity. Right, so how do you fix identity? We get a central source of identity that we can trust. But to show the value, I take the most risky people within the business, the people an example user that has access to that information, and I put them into a controlled, it's called conditional access, but I want to get into the technical terms, but put them into an area where I can say, where you log in from your boat next, or the cafe, or the football club, or wherever it is that you log in from, you're now going to be challenged, and that's going to be new to you. So as an executive or a sponsor in the business that's responsible for these outcomes, you're immediately going to feel that benefit. So coming back to the executive example, when you walk into the board and you say, hey, this is what we've done in order to fix this information protection problem, straight out the gate and quickly, and I'm talking within 1 month, right, we're able to say these 5 individuals that come from 5 parts of our business that we deem the most risky, we've now got them under a policy that says when they log in from somewhere we don't know or on a device we don't understand, they're going to be challenged to prove who they are. That immediately elevates that CXO's position in front of the board, because now I'm showing value, I'm showing wins, and I'm reducing the problem.
And at no point, though, are you telling them what technology you're going to use to do it necessarily.
Absolutely.
Because at that level, it's like, So it's really what I'm hearing is that, again, it's not like, we call it architect as a service, but it's not really an enterprise architect because it's not doing broad stuff around.
No, correct.
We'll bring in the necessary depth of skills as we unpack what it is.
Absolutely.
This is an individual that gets business, gets technology, can try and bridge the gap, but do it very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
And ultimately carve out, like you said, a roadmap where it's like, we know we need to do DLP, but unless we get identity solved first, given you haven't got that fixed, then that's the path we need to take.
Correct.
Get that solved, maybe then get the devices issue solved, then get our arms around what the data is, etc. So it becomes a process, but there are wins along the way.
Everybody loves a quick win, right?
Right, and so ultimately in that scenario, the win could have been, but I still don't have this protection on my data. It's like, but if you had it, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's like, I've got these really big wheels on my car, but they don't fit.
Yeah, 100%.
They look great, but they don't fit.
Exactly. Right. The two pieces that really stand out for me are value and productivity. Right. If you try and compromise on either of those, it's not a good ending.
Yeah.
Right. If we can deliver value and make people successful, the productivity piece gets impacted only if you do things like DLP wrong. If you put DLP in to fix a problem like a time bomb, it's going to be exactly that. It's going to sit there, and then it's going to start to block productivity. Mm-hmm. So what was an easy business process before is now hindered and broken because you put a product in to fix a problem you don't yet understand. Right. So that's fundamentally what it is, getting those two pieces right.
So get the right people in the room, but before we get them in the room, gather some information. And it's not technical, it's not how many servers do you have. It's not,
absolutely not,
It's not those kinds of questions because we're not interested in that.
No.
It's the why questions. What are the big problems you're having? Why are these problems? How have you thought about solving these problems to date?
Correct.
What have you considered? Those kinds of questions.
Yeah, exactly. There are other questions, Ronnie, that we get that we'll put to a client that, do you have an existing roadmap, right? Do you have an existing strategy? Mm-hmm. In lots of cases, you get bold individuals, we've all been bold. We've got a strategy and, do you know what though? If I'm really honest with you, on that score of 1 to 10, I have a strategy that looks like a 10. It's a nice glossy, but my ability to execute it is probably a 4 because I don't understand it and I don't know how.
Right.
So one of the questions would be, if somebody could validate your current thinking and your current strategy, and it's an independent mind that is not biased to any vendor or technology, that will just sit and listen, look at what you've got and say, given what you have there, if you execute it in this fashion, you will be successful. Mm-hmm. Conversely, given what you've got and you try to execute that way, these are the reasons.
So it's kind of expert as a service, right? Yeah. It's like someone who can, or like independence as a service, or there's lots of different things that it does. So it's not an enterprise architect. It's not a big end of town consultancy engagement. It's very specific. It's very targeted at picking the big business problems that need to be solved, working out how they might be able to be solved, and then whatever comes out of that is whatever comes out of that.
Correct.
So then we're no longer going in and just doing one piece of Win 10 rollout and getting out. Mm-hmm. We're actually working with a client to help them get the most benefit out of what it is they're doing based on what it is the reason why they're trying to achieve something.
Correct.
And so for our partners then, for all of you who are the partners, who are watching this, what you'll find is that the outputs that come from this turn into potential projects that you can take on. It's not always about Insentra taking on those projects and delivering them on your behalf. We can uncover those and we can then help you work with your clients and actually continue to add value rather than go in and do a project and get out. And that's really what we're trying to do here. And if you're an end client who works with some of our partners and you're interested in this service, that's how it'll work for you, right? We're not there to try and sell tech, is what I'm hearing, right?
Correct.
We're not selling we don't sell licenses, any of the tier 1 product licenses anyway.
Exactly.
So there's nothing in it for us to try and drive more hardware or drive more software sales or anything like that. We're really interested in the outcome. And even if the outcome is that we're not the ones delivering the services, that's okay because that's the value we try to bring to our partners and their clients.
Yeah.
Does that summarise it?
100%, Ronnie. And I think to talk to one of our core values being trust, one of the big value points is building trust with that client and that partner in this instance, right? So that they feel that they can come to us in a very unbiased way and work with us to get to that point of an outcome without the concern of you're trying to sell me more, you're trying to push more, you're trying to get me to do compliance or true up or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And have we been in an engagement with a client where we've gone in and had a chat and said, you know what, we actually can't help you, but here's what you got to go do, and we can help you find someone who can do it?
Kind of, yeah. We've been in engagements absolutely where probably 2/3 of the outcome is not something that we do, right? But again, the beauty of our model is you have some choices, Mr. Client. We can deliver this. We can absolutely deliver the roadmap. We're able to tell you what you need to do and in what order.
Yeah.
This particular piece, if there's a whole collaboration piece that they want to integrate with CRM and Dynamics and so on, and that's just not something that we do.
Take it to our partner.
Let
our partner work it out. And
Exactly.
if our partner can't do it, then it's up to our partner to decide who they want to take it to and help
Exactly.
the client ultimately. But the reason we call it as a service is because we want to stay engaged there and
we want
monitor
to
the
continue
process.
to execute the roadmap.
And
Correct.
make sure that those things are actually happening. So
Yep.
it could involve a project oversight, it could involve...
Yeah.
They're all things that fall out of it. But the key is in 2 to 4 days,
Yep.
very quick roadmap.
Yep.
And in that roadmap, what do we provide?
Great question. So if I use the example that I gave around the information protection example, that was a roadmap that arrived at 4 phases or stages. And the phase 1 we've already talked to was identity. So effectively what we want to show in a roadmap is kind of cliche, but we want to show continuous improvement and risk reduction over time, which is, if I'm a CXO, that's what I want to see. That's success for me, right? So a roadmap would exist of a column, be it in phase 1 is identity, and the very first thing in that column is going to say time to value, right? That's core to the offering. If I'm going to do identity, how quickly am I going to get value from it, and what does it mean for the next stream or the next phase of this delivery? So time to value, and then a duration like 1 month. Then you're going to have duration. So how long is it going to take to complete this identity phase piece of work? Might be 6 months. And then what everyone wants to know is what's a rough order of magnitude price to do this. So from an executive standpoint, it's almost like a 2-page front and back. High level roadmap, these are the 4 things we need to do. Identity, devices with security, information protection, and then migrate our users' devices and workloads into that platform.
And then across that, I imagine there's a whole change management component too.
Correct, yeah, absolutely. So how we get this delivered, who we get it delivered with, who's responsible for what, RACI and everything else comes as the next sort of iteration of the deliverable. On the second side of that, the same columns is a bit more detail, a bit more fat into what we're going to do in identity. Because once a CXO, we have 2 or 3 hours with a CXO, and they get the roadmap and they buy into it and it's agreed to, and that's a critical part. It's not something where we listen to you, go away and craft something and then throw it back to you. It's, all the way through the process, we say, this is why we're thinking this needs to be executed this way. Let's give some dialogue, get some input from you. Do you see that as successful? But the point being, at the end of that session with the CXO, we've got agreement on that roadmap in principle to solve the problem. At that point in time, we haven't got the time to value and the duration and the cost, but they know what to expect from this is how my problem is going to get solved. Then that gets passed down to probably someone more in the technical realm. So a CXO might give it to a CIO or an infrastructure manager to unpack a bit more and raise any questions. And that's when in identity we talk about some of the value pieces and how we're going to do it. Based on what we've learned about their entitlement subscription, what they have available, and incumbencies and so on. So someone technical can look at it and say, I can see why you're doing that.
Okay.
I can see why you're going on that journey. You're not just plugging in product to fill small holes.
So effectively then for an end user client who's works with one of our partners,
Yeah.
they can get us in for 2 to 4 days.
Yeah.
And at the back end of it, we will ideally have worked out a way to solve for their big problems.
Yeah.
And I imagine if we can't solve for a problem, we'll know that early up just from the questionnaire, and we won't
Correct.
even bother engaging and taking money for no reason.
Correct.
Right? So if we can see that there's something we can add value, then we will.
Yep.
If it's not in our wheelhouse, they're not, so if a CXO comes and says, my biggest problem is I'm worried about cash burn. So, well, that's not us. We
Yeah.
can't help you with cash burn.
Yep.
Unless your cash burn is because you're spending too much money on cloud infrastructure.
Which is the why.
And that's
right?
where we can go. So why are you concerned about that? Exactly.
Yep.
All right. So architecture as a service, expert as a service, legend as a service, someone to come in. It's really an extension of an organisation's team.
Yep.
Independent pair of eyes coming in, helping to solve the critical business problems, giving people very, very quick time to value.
Yep.
Short, sharp, not a big tombstone of data, not a whole, roadmap that's detailed, but these are the things we need to address, and then that will spawn off a project that may address that particular item.
Yep.
And see where that goes.
Execution.
Okay,
Yep.
fantastic. Leroy, is there anything else around this service that you'd like to share with our partners and their clients?
I just think, from my own experience, from where I've come from, if this was available to me when I was consulting, or even when I was in client land, as you know from my previous life, I would be all over this. And we're finding that clients are loving the agility of the service. So it's not I have to buy it in this way, or it has to be delivered in this way. What if I change my mind along the way, or we acquire a company and it's almost like
change.
it's the modern workplace of architecture. It's evolving, it's agile, it's fast. It's the way people want to do business today. They don't want to spend months talking about a problem that 6 months from now won't exist because something else has happened. So I think that's the last thing I'd add: the agility and the speed and the value that we're able to bring, and then with that the associated immediate savings.
And we're seeing an incredible uptake.
Oh yeah, it's at least 3 or 4 days in the week we've got clients or partners registering interest via the web or calls or referrals. And once we deliver this to a client, those CXOs, they play golf together, or they water ski together. It's word of mouth is just flying. It is phenomenal.
Fantastic. Leroy, mate, well done for coming up with this, identifying a gap in the market, plugging the gap, doing it in a novel, new, different way, which kind of goes with, the first line of our vision statement of daring to be different.
Absolutely.
And it's always tough when you're taking something that nobody's done before to market. You've got to educate the market, let you guys understand a little bit more about it, particularly with something like this where it can be a bit nebulous.
Yeah.
But it also is very targeted, and it's rapid return. And ideally, I call it crawl, walk, run, right?
Yeah.
We sort of want to crawl with a customer, a partner and their client. We want to build something, then walk together, and then once we work this out, we start running.
Yeah.
We're staying engaged. We're going through those challenges together to get to an outcome. Mate,
Absolutely.
Leroy, thanks for joining me on the couch, buddy.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Awesome
Absolute
stuff.
pleasure. Thank you.